everybody. Welcome to our language scientific webinar today called The Quality in the Age of AI. I am Sahal. I'm your moderator for today, and I'm super excited to introduce you to Ashley Mondello, Vice President at the Chat Language Scientific, who has a rich background in clinical and pharmaceutical sectors. She established the localization department at PhD, and currently as VP of Operations at Language Scientific. She has scaled processes to support rapid growth while leading initiatives in AI and machine translation services to meet unique client needs efficiently. Ashley has been at Language Scientific for more than 10 years, so she is a real veteran here, and she manages daily operations, global infrastructure, and Language Scientific's proprietary internal systems, ensuring the integration of technology to enhance customer service and maintain operational consistency. Wow, that's a lot, and that really speaks a lot to who she is. So excited to have you, Ashley. Say welcome to everybody.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for everyone who's watching.
We're going to make this a question and answer session today, if that's okay with you, Ashley. Just
Yeah,
learning as much as we can from the amazing experience you have. So I'm going to kick things off with the first question I have, right, which is kind of a more general one, and we'll get to more specific over time. But how has the language or quality industry's view of quality shifted over the years? Can you give us your perspective on that, please?
sure. I think quality has been rapidly changing in the age of AI. So once upon a time, the measure of quality was simple, and what clients were looking for was simple. They were looking for the best possible quality, the gold standard, perfect translation. And several years ago, that was achievable because the scale of what our companies, our clients are come to us with was much smaller. But in this digital boom that is happening and the explosion of multilingual content, we're seeing that that our clients are really having trouble meeting the budgets and turnaround times to get all of this content translated. And what that's given rise to is choosing to develop a quality metric that matches fit for purpose. So it's less about the gold standard. The clients that we have now and in the age of this multimedia explosion, clients have to translate everything, especially if they're a global company, internal memos to external facing products. And the reality is that best perfect quality translation is not achievable within the timelines that they need and within their budgets. And one of the key pieces to that is really understanding what level of quality is required for specific pieces of content. So the shift for LSPs has been that we're moving more into this age of helping clients manage their budget while achieving their full spectrum of multilingual needs. And what that comes down to is understanding the term that we use in the industry called fit for purpose. So gone is the day when you're an LSP and you're selling to a client or a client that's looking for perfect translations for absolutely every piece of content that they're localizing. The reality there is that the client needs guidance on what is the right level of quality and accuracy needed for that specific content type. And really, the turning point in seeing this shift in the industry came when we were struggling to sell based on quality. So, Language Scientific has always staked the claim on providing the best possible quality translation. Our tagline, if you don't understand it, you can't translate it. We often said, we probably aren't the cheapest and we probably aren't the fastest, but we will provide the best quality you can find in the industry. And the reality is that selling on best quality is not something that resonates with clients anymore. They have far too much content to translate and too little of a budget to associate to the translation needs. And so as an LSP, it's our opportunity and our responsibility to help guide them on what level of quality makes sense for each specific content type they're dealing with. And I think that's where quality has shifted over the years. We saw, it was this static gold standard that everybody was looking for. And then in the age of AI, and really what's pushing all of this is the explosion of content that customers are required to put out in other languages. And, it went from, some basic product and customer facing patient-facing information to really needing to globalize everything that they're putting out. And the growing pains there is what sort of shifted this view on quality, that quality isn't just one gold standard that you're after. It's about how do we provide the right kind of quality for that specific type of content.
What a great answer. And for some of the audience who might not know the acronym LSP, that stands for Language Service Provider. I just want to make sure that's correct, right? Yeah, great.
Yes, correct.
Awesome. All right. All right. You mentioned AI. Everybody's talking about it. It's the big boom word these days. So let's get into your personal perspective in AI. So how do you personally define quality at scale today, given today's AI-driven age?
So I think quality at scale in the AI age is really about coaching and educating a client, helping them understand their business, what the types of content are that require localization within their business, and then smartly and in a risk mitigation approach, applying AI to achieve localization across all the types of content that they have, but applying humans into that process for review and accuracy in a smart and deliberate way that basically increases their efficiency while being able to handle a much larger scope of multilingual content with the same budget that they had historically been operating on. And what AI does is really allows that the LSPs can help them localize all of their content without having to do a full human driven process for every piece of information that needs to be translated. I mentioned internal memos and things like that that aren't necessarily reaching their outward customer base. And that information is low risk. And, what it needs in terms of a quality level for translation is very different than, an instruction for use that may be going to a surgeon inserting a cardiac stent, right? It's all about understanding what the risk is associated with each type of content and then applying AI in a way that mitigates that risk, but also achieves a translation that is usable for that specific purpose.
What a great answer. I mean, I think what I learned from you is there's a gradient of internal versus external, and the risk profile goes up over time, and you could be affecting people's lives. So that could be a good moniker to use when you're thinking about just using ML versus doing it with an assisted approach. Is that a good understanding of what you said?
Yes, exactly. And I think, the big shift now is that quality is a spectrum. I think that's what the industry is now understanding. It's not this one piece, but it's a spectrum where you evaluate the risk of that specific piece of content and find the appropriate place on the spectrum of quality for that particular piece. And so, it has pushed the industry to evaluate and reinvent the ways that they're measuring quality and measuring accuracy because the reality of the situation is not every piece of content that a client needs translated or a company needs translated needs to be perfect.
Right.
And the application of humans to each piece of a translation, whether it be high risk or low risk, just doesn't make sense because it costs more money. So if you look at it in terms of evaluating risk, you can look at an internal memo and say, the risk that there is a grammatical error that exists in this and that is going to cause a catastrophic failure somewhere in the organization is very low. And
Right.
so, what can we do to apply a budget that makes sense? And when we look at that, we apply a budget that has limited human intervention in it because the reality is AI is much cheaper to use than having any kind of human intervention in the process. And so, quality now is really looking at it in terms of how much human intervention from subject matter experts is needed to meet the basic need of that particular type of content.
Perfect. Okay, great. I get clearly what you're kind of analytically kind of dimensionalizing for us. So thank you. Let's dig a little bit deeper again. You know about AI as you just talked about. How much is AI actually changing the way you and the others in the industry define quality, like knowing your kind of expertise in this area?
Yeah, it's really pushing the industry as a whole to relook at how we evaluate and measure quality. There has been this push in the industry since the introduction of AI and the explosion of it, really, to move away from the static error counting methodologies that were traditionally used in measuring the quality of a translation. And now there's this push to having a more dynamic approach where it's risk aware and fit for purpose. And so, it's not about, you take an internal memo and an outwardly product facing piece and you translate both of them. And in the traditional metrics, you would count the number of grammatical errors, the number of style errors, you would, punctuation errors, things like that. And then you get a score for the translation. The reality of that is measuring those scores is meaningless because the impact is much greater for one piece of content versus the other. And so it may be for an internal use document or what we call a low risk document that it's acceptable to have minor grammatical issues. Maybe there's some punctuation or misspelling issues. These are things that are acceptable for internal use. And you see it in the age of people becoming more used to poorer quality translations. So, right, anybody who's watched a Netflix show and put on the subtitles, or if they're on Facebook and it says, translate this if you see a comment, and it'll automatically translate it. You can often get the gist of what is being said, but it's probably not an accurate translation, but you understand what is being said. And so the general population is becoming more used to now that, translation of comments in Facebook or, having every video on Netflix subtitled, they're done on a machine translation level. So the quality is not perfect. And the general public has become used to that and sort of accepted it. So what we've taken is that when you have a population of people who are more and more growing to be accepting of minor errors in a translation, you find that for internal use documents, it's okay that if there's a minor issue within the translation, a grammatical issue, a punctuation issue, people still find it acceptable and are understanding what that piece of content is saying and what the purpose of it is. On the other end of that, we have high risk content where you can absolutely not have those kinds of issues. And so I think the way AI is shifting or defining quality is really looking at a risk-based approach to quality. We're also seeing that quality is really starting to be tied to downstream impact. So quality is being closely tied to lower time to publish, fewer safety events, higher conversion in CSAT, and lower support burden. And so what AI is allowing us to do is instrument a workflow process that gives us the downstream impact, the company's wider downstream impact by minimizing their budget and their timelines by allowing things like quality estimation or automatic post editing. And what these tools do is they evaluate the first round of the machine translation or an LLM translation, and they can give us an idea of where that quality stands. And from that point, we can discuss with the client, we can have an upfront conversation about, okay, well, here's what the quality estimation is telling us right out of the straight machine translation. What level of quality are you looking for? And then we have a conversation around what level of human application do we do to improve the quality of the translation. And some clients on low risk pieces say, the machine translation looks good enough. The point has been communicated effectively, and we can accept the minor errors in it. And then there are some middle level risk pieces where, if one or two errors exist in the translation, it's not the end of the world, but we'd like a slightly more polished translation. And we then can tailor and apply the right level of human subject matter impact onto that translation to provide the right level of quality on that spectrum. And what we're seeing in the industry is that so ISO put out a guidance called 1166-9, which supports this idea around having goals for quality, not perfect quality, but having fit for purpose and matching what the client's specific requirement of level of quality is. We're also seeing that we're moving away from static LQA metrics that the industry has widely used. We've seen that the DFQ and the MQM, which are industry accepted evaluation rubrics is for quality, we're seeing them move and push towards tailored metrics, which means you're identifying QA profiles that look for the errors that are important for that specific content type. So when not to continue to use the example of a low risk translation or an internal memo. So there is, theoretically, there is a fundamental message that they're trying to get across. And tailoring a QA profile to evaluate that piece needs to be very specific about what it's looking for. Whether it's grading punctuation errors very low, but the actual content itself and the accuracy of what's being said higher. When there's a situation where you're going into marketing material that's high risk for, say, a pharmaceutical company that's bringing in, that's developing a brochure that will be used for patients. So, right, we want it to look good. We want the punctuation to be right, and we want it grammatically accurate. And so that follows a very different QA profile. And so what we're seeing is that these standard metrics that were once fit for all, the MQM had a standard way of evaluating quality and measuring each different error typology. And we're seeing a move away from that into these specialized QA profiles where we're measuring not general quality to a gold standard, but we're measuring quality to the risk that it's associated with.
Awesome. Awesome. Wow, that's great. Okay. Um, Let me ask you the next degree of specificity in the next question. Where does scaling QE or AP work well today? And where does it break down? And do we still need humans in the loop in this whole process or these processes?
That's a great question. I think humans are always going to be the key piece in the world of AI and translation. There are, well, AI, quality estimation, automatic post editing, any application of AI in the translation world, well, it can be an excellent way to amplify productivity. At the end of the day, subject matter experts are going to continue to be such a large piece of the translation process. And that's why, the message to our clients is really it's about the smart application of humans and applying it where it makes the largest impact without ruining their budget by applying humans unnecessarily to every step in a process. I think that quality estimation has become like a very necessary part of meeting client needs. And like I mentioned, quality estimation provides an LSP with an understanding of where a translation output falls in the spectrum of quality right out of machine translation. And then it's the responsibility of the LSP to coach the client and talk through what is the acceptable level of quality that you would like beyond the machine output. Does that mean we do 2 rounds of post editing? We have 2 subject matter experts that review it, one right after the other to verify accuracy. Does it mean that we do a light post editing by a single person for a medium risk translation content? And I think one of the other big things that QE is really doing for the industry is it's driving the critical decision making. So it's limiting the amount of human overhead that's required to make critical decisions throughout the translation process. So what QE can do for us now is it can tell us what machine translation engine is appropriate for that specific content type. It can tell us where in the process we should force a subject matter expert to review. It can tell us what content is appropriate to have an automatic post edit applied to it. And then it can tell us when there's content that scores so low on the quality spectrum that it absolutely needs some kind of human intervention. Um, and so the AI becoming a critical driver in these decisions helps one speed up the process. It slowly starts to remove humans from some of the task-based work that they were doing and elevating their position to focus more on end quality and more on strategy of building workflows. So what we find is that things like automatic post editing, they have proven to be effective tools that can be used to sort of do a first round post edit on a translation prior to having humans touch it to fix some basic errors that it knows right off the bat exist within the translation. And I think that automatic post editing will continue to evolve and become better at what it is, as we've seen all AI do. But the reality is that QE and automatic post editing, they really shine into specific areas. They shine as precision filters and they shine as productivity amplifiers. But the one thing we know that they can't do is they can't arbitrate the truth. So human is the real truth holder in the translation process. And while they reduce the volume of work that a human has to touch, a human will always need to be there because as far as we are at in the AI journey, it can't yet replace human judgment. It does a poor job at context sensitive interpretation of text. Sometimes it can have errors with factual correctness. It struggles with tone and intent of a translation, and particularly high risk content, it has not performed the best. I think QE and AP need to be applied with safety rails in high risk content. So we know that in technical texts that automatic post editing and QE can tend to struggle. And the reality is because most of the quality estimation models that exist out there and most of the automatic post editing models that exist are trained to be generalists. So they're fed a lot of information and they're a knowledge jack of all trades, but not a subject matter expert in everything. And so when a LSP that is dealing with high risk content, like language scientific and in the life science industry, some of the highly regulated content that's out there, what we find is that QE models and APE models, they really perform best when their domain, their style, and their register match what the training data has been given to it. And so if you don't have a specialized model specifically for life science, specifically for pharmaceutical, specifically for a regulated industry, it's really going to struggle with a lot of accuracy, and that's where we see some problems come up. We see that it will sharply degrade in its level of adequacy in performing translation when you move into highly specialized subject matters. And the other piece that we see that is a challenge, although, the industry is making strides in trying to solve this, but quality estimation and automatic post editing, for the most part, most of the models operate on a segment by segment basis. So it will provide you a quality score for one segment and then another segment and then another segment. And automatic post editing will go in and read that score. And if the score is below the threshold that the workflow deems acceptable, it will go in and try and make an edit to that translation. The challenge here is it is not reading the context of the entire document. Because QE and AP operate primarily on segment by segment basis, they tend to struggle with cross sentence cohesion, terminology consistency, and layout and format dependencies. So, again, this is where we see that the human injected into the workflow for these highly regulated materials makes the most sense. because it does struggle with these things. We also, a commonly accepted thing in the AI world and in the world of large language models has been a hallucination. And for generalist material, that can be easily managed because you're dealing with low risk information. But the reality is that AI has become very good at presenting information factually that can be so convincing it is missed as an error. And so what we call this in the industry like a hallucination because we call it a false correction. And what that means is the QE will score a segment poor. Automatic post editing will go in and attempt to fix the translation. And they will make fixes that they think the quality estimation score is looking for. And oftentimes, QE will, in highly specialized material, QE will inappropriately flag a segment as low scoring. AP will go in and say, I know exactly what you want me to fix in this segment and fix it, and actually create an incorrect translation. And, in many of the tests and papers that I've written with Language Scientific is this is one of the scarier things because it becomes very hard to identify. And we find that our human reviewers, our subject matter experts, they can sometimes miss these things because AI is so adept at making what looks like a correction, but introducing an error. Because what AI will do is make it sound more fluent, but it will still factually be incorrect. So the text will read fluent, but the critical information that is contained in the text may not be properly represented.
Yeah. It's
And
like it's
yes,
almost
so
like the data that it learned from was incorrect, which drove incorrect all the way through the pipe, all the way to the end. Which is why, as you said earlier, the subject matter expert who knows this industry, particularly in the life science industry, is so important.
yes, absolutely. And we see, I mean, and one of the things that we advise our clients about when they're building specialized large language models or when they're evaluating the quality of their AI system, that this is something that it needs to happen on a regular basis. So it's not gone are the days where you get a source and a target and you validate the factual information for it. So LLMs are constantly producing translations and learning from those translations. It takes one poor piece of data to make it into that training to start to slowly degrade the quality of output in the engine, and then it will hyperloop it and exacerbate that error. And so, in the age of AI, it's about developing a good quality monitoring system to make sure that as an engine is being trained, that the quality is staying consistent and we're not seeing sort of something go wrong in the training data and then be perpetuated out and start creating a much larger issue.
Wow. Phew. I'm exhausted after that answer. That was a great answer, but you very clearly showed the risks of AI. Thank you. Okay, let me move to the cost side of the equation because all of our customers obviously are interested about efficiency and cost. So knowing about the risks that we just talked about, how do you talk with clients about cost savings and efficiency without ignoring these risks that we just spent the last 10 minutes on about the risks of AI?
So I think it's all about education with clients. The reality is that most of the clients that I encounter exist on two sides of the spectrum. One, they have been sold the magic pill that AI does everything in a snap of a button and it's always correct, or that it's taking over the world and it can be a real risk to your specialized content. And the reality is teaching the client what AI is good at and where it falls short, and how to intentionally apply human guardrails in the areas that it falls short is really key to the success of helping a client by leveraging AI. So obviously, a lot of our clients come to us and that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the cost savings, they're looking for the time savings. Um, but it's all about teaching them how risk management works in translation workflow and how to evaluate what the level of content is that you're translating. What is the risk level associated with it? What types of AI make sense to apply to the workflow that can safely lower cost and time without putting at risk the accuracy of the information that you're trying to put out? And I think, you know, getting clients to understand that that AI is not a magic bullet. It has its flaws, but it's also not something to be afraid of because when leveraged correctly with a risk mitigation mindset, it can do transformational things to client budgets and timelines. And I think helping them to understand the goal of AI is to not replace the human, it's to replace wasted human touch. And so every time a human touches a piece of translation within a workflow, that costs the client money and it costs them time. Humans are the bottleneck in the translation workflow. And so it's all about identifying what areas of the translation workflow make the most sense to be replaced by computers and what sort of validation can humans do after the fact that that protects and mitigates the risk of what a computer might introduce into a translation, but without unnecessarily wasting a highly paid resource's time to do low-level work. I think that's what we're seeing in the industry as a whole is in this age of AI, it's all about the subject matter humans being intelligently applied to a workflow that maximizes impact and not tying them down to lower level tasks. So people often ask me if linguists are going to lose their jobs. And I just did a talk at a conference a month ago, and I think they are the key to the subject matter expert linguists that exist in the industry are the key to this. They're the one piece that will never go away. They contain the knowledge to make sure translations are accurate and appropriate. And the goal of the industry will never be to replace those humans. The goal is to elevate their role to true subject matter experts and apply their knowledge in a very deliberate and efficient way to ensure we're not wasting their time, which in turn wastes our clients' budget and turnaround times.
What a great answer. Good balance there, actually. Thank you. All right. I'm going to give one last question to you because I know you've just given us so much incredible information today. Um, so, thinking about like client adoption of AI, because you kind of mentioned it in the last answer, right? What would help or hinder client adoption of AI at scale when it comes to quality management?
This is a big thing that I'm a proponent of for LSPs in the industry. I think it is um, what will hinder or help our clients' adoption of AI into translation workflows is going to be solely based on their experiences with it. And this is where the LSPs in the industry really hold a responsibility. It is our responsibility to be risk mitigating mindsets that apply AI to the translations in a very deliberate but effective way that is mitigating risk. And I think what we'll see is, we've seen it in general in the general view of AI in many industries is that people are starting to get burned. They sort of had overconfidence in what AI was capable of doing and got a little bit lax with the way the implementation went. And companies have been burned by that. And what we need to try and avoid as a community of LSPs is to make sure that we are thoughtfully applying AI to our clients' workflows so that we're giving them positive experiences that build their confidence with the tool. And also education. I mean, the real key to applying AI in a thoughtful way is making sure your clients really understand the downfalls and the positives that come with AI so that they're fully informed on the decisions that they're making. I think that that is one of the major responsibilities that we have as language service providers. And I think in the industry, we'll see if LSPs do this right and provide really positive experience, we will see more people coming with an open mind on adopting an AI workflow because it's going to help them manage their overall budgets and hit the timelines that they need. I think the other thing that will help our with AI quality at scale is the idea that AI is only going to get better. So while confidence is at a medium level for most people in the industry, I mean, you'll find a full spectrum of people who think it's much farther along than it is, or some that will tell you it's much further behind than it is. Sort of a moderate on the scale, but I believe that it's only going to get better. And so the shortfalls that we see currently with quality estimation and automatic post editing and the application of AI into automated workflows, we see it doing well, but we're every day developing ways to make it more effective. And so I think confidence will continue to grow, and that will enable many organizations to be more open to adopting AI at scale.
Great. Wow. Responsible adoption, kind of, that's what I've heard from you today, right? Uh,
Yes,
Looking at
exactly.
risk and maybe responsible. Thank you. We've extracted so much incredible information out of you, Ashley. Thank you for the time today. And this concludes our webinar. This was Ashley Mondello, VP of Operations at Language Scientific, and we thank you for joining today.
Thank you so much.